In the words of the poet, the spring has sprung, the grass is res, I wonder where the birdies is. Well, it is, of course, spring, has been for the last few days. Well, according to Phil Duncan from WeatherWatch.co.nz, it's been spring for weeks. Now, Phil, kia ora, welcome to the program today.
Kia ora, thanks for having me again.
It must feel like spring now for a lot of people. It is a sunny day in much of the country and it's officially September. Lots of good stuff to celebrate. Not only the grass is ris, but there's daffodils and baby lambs and all of that good stuff. It's a good feeling, isn't it?
It is, and the windy westerlies that we've been getting off and on, they're helping to lift up our temperatures, which is why we're getting some pretty mild daytime highs. Maybe not so much the last day or two because we had a brief southerly change, so it was a bit colder this morning. But a couple of days ago, people were waking up in the north to 16, 17 degrees, which is very mild for this time of the year to be starting your day at that point. And then getting up to the low to mid-20s, breaking some records or getting tied to some records. In New Zealand, a lot of our heat records come from a windy nor'wester. So we're not like other countries where, each summer might just creep up a little bit more. We just have to have one windy nor'wester at the right time with the sun out and boom, we break a record. So I think we might see more records challenged and broken over the coming weeks because we are seeing an exceptionally stormy Southern Ocean at the moment. And it's producing very low pressure, down to the 920 hectopascal mark the other day. 950 is going to be the storm passing near Stewart Island this Saturday. And Saturday brings the next risk of severe weather, strong winds, severe gales around the South Island, the lower North Island, and heavy rain returns to the west coast. So it's certainly spring. So
storms in the Southern Ocean brings lovely weather to the rest of us because honestly, who lives in the Southern Ocean, right? Apologies to anybody listening from Stewart Island, but for the most part, it's penguins, and they love it cold, right?
They do. I mean, it's the Southern Ocean is supposed to be stormy even in summer, but especially at August and September kind of time of the year. This year is a little different because the size and the depth of the storms is really something. They are sort of, every now and then you'll get a storm that tracks by with the air pressure around 940 or 930 hectopascals, and the weather geeks out there get excited about it. But we've had sort of one after the other for 3-4 weeks and more on the way in that same sort of very low air pressure. And so we've got a classic spring setup with high pressure to the north of us, low pressure to the south of us, and we're stuck in the middle with the windy westerlies, and that's why it feels like spring. It's why we're seeing spring weather. But these big storms that we've got down in the Southern Ocean, they're worth monitoring because it only takes one to sort of just get the right angle to it, and boom, we've got a snowstorm or a big frost event. Yeah. And so the warmer than usual September that we're going to have is going to maybe lull us into a false sense of security about the fact that maybe all the cold air is gone, but it is just south of us. And so it only takes a little bit of a twist in the airflow. And right now, because of this setup, we're getting a lot of air coming out of Australia, and that's why it's so warm and going to get warmer over the next day or two ahead.
All that hot air out of Australia. I mean, it's good news for the farmers. It's good news for those people that were just sick of winter. Not such good news for the ski fields, I imagine. All this hot air and not a lot of snow. I mean, they'll be praying for one of those southerly storms, I imagine.
Yeah, that's it. And so we've got some rain coming in this weekend, which will start to fall as snow. So it starts basically overnight Friday going into Saturday. That rain sets in on the west coast. But on Saturday, these surge of severe gales will move through the South Island. After that, and even more so next week, Monday, Tuesday of next week, there's a good chance that we could get another dusting of snow back into the southern ski fields. Okay. We won't be seeing it going up into the north, I don't think, but the south could get another dusting of snow in those southern ski fields. So that's a positive twist on it. And also a bit of rain spilling over into Canterbury. Maybe not a huge amount, but still some more heavy rain going into those hydro lakes, which is what we want to hear for everyone in the country who wants to save a bit of money on our power bills.
Exactly. Good for the hydro lakes, good for a little bit of spring growth for the farmers in that part of the country as well. Any thoughts on, I mean, hey, you talked about a false sense of security. We can go, oh gosh, isn't it fantastic? This is it, roll on summer. It's going to be this good for the rest of the time. Long term for the rest of September, though, I mean, yeah, results will vary. But can we expect more of the same? What's the odds on this one, Phil?
Yeah, I think we're in a pretty messy weather pattern at the moment. And so the westerlies that we've had for a couple of weeks and have still got for another week to come, they will fade out, though, in about a week's time from now. And that's when we might see our next proper change. One of the things I've noticed this year, especially during winter, was that each low and each high that rolled in lasted for a good couple of weeks, if not 3 weeks or more. And so that hasn't really changed yet, which means maybe going into September, 3 weeks of windy westerlies. What does that mean after it? Another 3 or 4 weeks of what's the next thing? And it's that what's the next thing is the part we haven't got figured out yet.
Yeah.
We are starting to see more lows forming in our part of the world. That's a little bit of a hint that La Nina is trying to form, although don't worry about La Nina. It's not yet forecast to sort of do anything.
Yep.
But that could just produce a few more lows here and there. And on top of that, the Tasman Sea is warmer than average as well, and including the southern part of it, which means that any rain event that does sort of slowly meander our way, a low pressure zone, for example, or a thunderstorm, will have that little bit of extra energy in it. So I think that's why this is going to be perhaps more of a classic spring this year than previous years. There's a little more oomph in the energy in the atmosphere. But like I say, warmer than average, but one of these cold snaps could come in. But we're also starting to see a bit of life out of the subtropical areas too. So typical spring. It's all different angles.
All of that happening, and likely to see some more spectacular thunderstorms that I know we've had in the last week or so. Moving to other parts of the world, because I understand they're expecting big storms in the North Atlantic this year. They haven't eventuated. Maybe they've all migrated to the Southern Ocean.
It seems like it. I've got this thing about the planet. It's no different than the resources inside your kitchen fridge. You've got a certain amount of products in there. The planet's a little bit the same. You've got a certain area that's stormy and a certain area that's not. I'm never a fan of these long-range forecasts about hurricanes and cyclones. They are notoriously terrible. And this year was the one they were all getting giddy about being the worst ever. And it's turned out to be one of the quietest ones ever.
Okay.
So this is where, I believe in climate change. I believe humans are making the planet more polluted. But I do have a lot of skepticism about some of the long-range modeling that's used about, where's the world going? When they talk about this big hurricane season, and we're now passing the peak of it with very little to talk about. Meanwhile, in the Southern Ocean, we are seeing storms that rival Atlantic hurricanes, not one of them, but probably 5, 6, 7, 8 of them now over just the last few weeks. So it is remarkably stormy in the Southern Ocean, but not very stormy around the Atlantic, at least not for now. It could still change in another month, but for now it's not very active.
And, of course, those big storms, like I say, they're hitting the penguins, not the eastern seaboard of the United States, where it can cause such damage and devastation. And I think this is part of the thing. People get confused between climate and weather. Just because there's a change in the climate, that doesn't necessarily mean what the weather's going to be doing next Wednesday. For details on what the weather is going to be doing all of next week and the weekend ahead, of course, weatherwatch.co.nz. Phil, thanks for what you do. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the spring weather.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.